Hi everyone, Ashley here and welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. Today I'm sharing a card that I had so much fun making. This is all using Lawn Fawn products, including their roller coaster set, their Yeti set, and a few others, and I made this card designed to look like one of my favorite rides at Walt Disney World, and that is Expedition Everest. So for all of you Disney fans out there, you will know what I'm talking about, but for those that aren't Disney fans, I will try to explain as we go along. So without further ado, let's get into the card making. I'm starting by building the pull tab mechanism, and I'm using a waffle flower pull tab die for this. So for this mechanism, you start by using this notch die to cut two vertical notches into your card base, and that's where that pull tab mechanism will work. The important thing is that you want to make sure that that only cuts where you want the pull tab to start and end, so you can use partial die cutting if you have to achieve that. So you don't want it kind of going off the cardstock, you want it to start and end where the pull tab should start and end. So once that was cut, I used a cloud stencil and some Tumbled glass Distress Oxide ink to blend on the sky right over top of it. At the bottom, I'm blending on two more colors of blue Distress Oxide ink, one lighter and one darker, the light one being Mermaid Lagoon and the dark one being Blueprint Sketch, sort of in an arched fashion and just sort of blending them together to achieve that nice blend. And that will be the water at the bottom of the card. So how this card works is that this panel is the base. It has the sky and the water blending at the top and the bottom. But there will be another panel over the middle that will look like the mountains and the grass, and that's what I'm blending now. So onto the mountains, I'm blending brushed corduroy, which is this brown color. And then onto the grass, I will blend two different colors of green just to achieve a bit of an ombre effect, and that's cracked pistachio and lucky clover. And I'll just blend them on and sort of blend them together to get that nice graded look. Now how this mechanism will work is that these two pieces, the grass and the mountains, I'm going to glue them together and then elevate that entire panel over the middle of the card. And behind this panel is where the pull tab mechanism will be hidden, and the Yeti will sort of jump out from behind the mountains, which again will be elevated from that base of clouds and water. And hopefully this will all start to make sense once you see the card kind of starting to come together. Now, for those non-Disney fans out there, I'm just going to explain that Expedition Everest is a ride at Disney World. It is a roller coaster that is set at Everest, so Mount Everest, and the story is that you are riding through Mount Everest and your train gets attacked by a Yeti. So that is sort of the effect I was going for here with the Yeti sort of pulling up from behind the roller coaster, which is in those mountains as part of Everest, and sort of scaring you as the rider of the roller coaster. I also tried to incorporate some scenes from Disney World that are placed around Expedition Everest. So at Disney World, Expedition Everest is in Animal Kingdom and specifically in the Asia land. And they've incorporated a lot of Asian influence decorations. And one of the most important, or sort of most iconic, I guess I should say, is those colorful banners that really hang throughout all the pathways. And if you look online, you can see some really iconic pictures of Expedition Everest with those sort of banners hanging in front of it. And that is the look I was trying to go for on this card too. And again, you'll kind of see that coming together as we continue. But just to give you kind of the backstory. So I'm continuing, now that all of those background pieces are done, blended, and splattered onto, I'm going ahead and stamping out these images that it will be used on the card. I'm starting with the roller coaster image and the Yeti image. Those ones for sure I know I'm going to need. I'm not going to show here, but I also stamped out some trees a little bit later to fill out the scene, but I kind of did that after when I realized that I wanted them. So I started with these first images. I stamped them out using my Mini Misty onto some Neenah Solar White cardstock, which is great for Copic coloring, and I stamped them using some My Favorite Things black ink, which again is a really nice ink for Copic coloring. So if you haven't guessed already, I am coloring these images with my Copic markers. I'm using some browns for this roller coaster because it is a wooden roller coaster. Actually, I think in Disney World it might be metal, not wooden, but I think it's meant to have sort of like that wooden coaster effect. So I did color in brown. And for the cars, I'm just coloring them in different shades of gray. So using a light gray for the top, medium for the bottom, and then dark grays for these little accents such as the wheels. And I just wanted to keep those very simple. The flag I'm coloring in sort of a yellowy orange, and then the Yeti just gets a nice gray treatment around the edges. I love coloring these Yetis because they are so easy. Almost every time I color in the Yetis, all I do is just outline them with a light gray and maybe color in their faces with a slightly darker gray, which is what I'm doing here, and then they're done. So they are the easiest and cutest images to color ever, which is always a nice time because, you know, sometimes other images are so complicated to color and these are just sort of a breath of fresh air. So like I mentioned, I wanted these colorful little banners, and I don't have any sort of dies or stamps that would make it work, so I just made them on my own by cutting out tiny little squares of colored cardstock. So I've got them all sort of laid out here on my work surface. I did 4 of each color, and I used a pattern paper for them just to give a little bit of extra interest. So I did 4 red, 4 blue, 4 green, 4 yellow, and 4 white. Once I had the squares, I just cut off the edges to turn them into little triangles. And now I'm just arranging them on the card into those sort of banner patterns that I want. Off camera, I actually did cut them out to make them a little bit smaller. So they had been too big at first, and I made them a bit smaller, but same technique. Now, off camera, I did go ahead and do a few more elements. I stamped out the sentiment and cut it onto a banner of white cardstock, and that is "Life with you is thrilling," which I just thought went with this card theme really well. I also stamped out a few more images, like I mentioned, that I realized I need, so those trees that I just put on the grass, as well as some long, thin lines, which actually come in a Lawn Fawn stamp set that has like a bunch of baby clothes, and it's meant to be like a clothesline. And I'll link the name of that stamp set down below. But it worked well for this card to kind of be the line of those banners. Now I'm starting to assemble the mechanism. So for this, I had die cut the waffle flower pull tab die itself, which comes with these 2 little rectangles that you just stick in those notches, and then you can use that to pull it up and down. Now onto those little rectangles, you can glue this piece that sort of acts as the anchor, and that's what you'll eventually glue your image on that you want to be pulled. So just stick that little rectangle down, and what you want to do is just make sure that it doesn't get stuck to the card base itself, because then it wouldn't pull. So as I go through, I'm just kind of testing it and making sure that it pulls nicely. Now I did reinforce that pull tab with a second piece of cardstock to sort of double it up. And I was finding this was necessary because the pull tab the paper that I had used initially to make that pull tab was just a little bit too lightweight, and it was sort of trying to bend as it pulled up and down. So adding this sort of second reinforcement piece really helps. So if you're finding that issue too with your pull tabs, you're finding that they're wanting to bend, just try gluing on a second pull tab onto it and sort of doubling it up to reinforce it, and I found that worked really nicely. Now I'm popping that whole pull tab panel up onto some foam to allow that pull tab space to move. So I'm just using some double-sided tape and putting foam all around the pull tab. This also kind of helps keep the pull tab in place vertically because it can't move side to side, the foam is blocking it. And then so to finish off that pull tab and to add one extra detail, I'm just gluing on this little topper piece, which I had cut out of some yellow patterned paper to match some of those banners. And I'm just sticking that right onto the top of that pull tab, and that will tell the person receiving this card that they need to pull it. So then I can release all that release paper and stick that panel right down, and you can see that that pull tab goes up and down really nicely. So now it's time to stick the Yeti onto the pull tab where he should go, and I'm just kind of trying to figure out the best placement for that by using some temporary tape at first. Once I'm happy with it, I can just pull it off and use some permanent glue and stick him right down, or her. And I did glue a little roller coaster car into the Yeti's hand because in the story of the roller coaster in real life, the Yeti is there kind of tearing the roller coaster trails apart and sort of attacking the roller coaster. So I kind of wanted that element there as well, kind of like this Yeti is attacking the roller coaster. So now I'm just kind of gluing all the other pieces together. I'm gluing the other little roller coaster cars onto the coaster itself, gluing those snowy caps onto the mountains, and then gluing the roller coaster into the mountains. I also included that little second piece of the roller coaster to glue behind to kind of add a little bit more interest and dimension, and then of course adding a little flag to it as well. Once that's done, I can glue the grass right on top. And as you'll see, this is sort of now assembling that panel that will go over top of the pull tab and be right in the middle of the card. This needs to be elevated as well to give space for that Yeti to move up and down behind it. So for this, I'm also using some foam and just sticking some double-sided tape onto it to make sure that it sticks nicely. And what you want to make sure when you're doing this part is just that this foam doesn't get in the way of whatever's pulling. So I wanted to make sure there was no foam that would impact where the Yeti needed to pull up and down. So as long as you do that, then you're going to be all good. So once I had made sure of that, I then stuck down my panel right on top, and you can see that the Yeti just pulls up and down behind it. So once that was done, it was really just a matter of assembling the rest of these images onto the card and kind of gluing them down where I thought would look nice. I did add a couple clouds into the sky just to add a little bit of interest, and then it's time to build out these little banners. So for this, I just took that sort of stamped line and I laid it down on my work surface upside down. And then what I'm doing is I'm just taking each triangle, adding a little dab of glue to the top, and then sticking it down to the back of that line. And the whole point is that that clothesline type image will be on top, and the banner triangles will be coming up from behind it. So I added a couple little extra banners to kind of fill out the lines and make sure that it really took up all the space on this scene as nicely as possible. And then I can kind of figure out where I want the trees to be and just assemble everything in the spot that I think looks the nicest. And you can, when you're doing this, you can play around, see what looks nice, and just kind of glue things down one at a time once you figured out exactly where you think everything should go. So for this, I'm just using my craft tweezers to hold things where I think they need to be and then gluing things down with some liquid glue. This card already has a lot of dimension with sort of the 2 layers of foam for that pull tab mechanism, so I didn't really feel like things on the front of the card needed more dimension, so that's why I'm just using liquid glue to stick all of these elements down onto the scene. And I'm just cutting off little excess bits where they come off the edge. Now I can stick down the trees, and then finally the card is complete. That is it. That is the card for today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you learned a little bit about pull tab mechanisms and how to make them, and I had so much fun making this card. If you can't tell, I am a Disney fan, and just obviously with the pandemic, you know, we haven't really been able to go as much as we wanted to, or at all like we wanted to, and I am missing it. So this is sort of a little way for me to bring some of the Disney magic back to my own home in a way that I know how, with, of course, my favorite hobby being card making. So you can see as you pull that pull tab, it's a little bit tricky to get a hold of it. Sometimes I need to use my tweezers, but once you've got it, you can pull it up and down and you see that Yeti coming up from behind the roller coaster, which I think is really fun. So thank you so much for watching today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more of my cards, definitely head over to my Instagram account, which is linked down in the description box below, or check out some of the other videos on my channel. I have a bunch, and you can just go check out any of them. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!